We live in a world where a wealth of information lies in the palm of our hands or just a Google search away, where I can talk to someone on the other side of the world in seconds or be with them physically in hours. With all the advancements that man has made in business, technology, personal and political freedoms, our world should have entered a golden age of utopia. Yet when I look around, I can't help but wonder, why is the world still so shitty? If common sense tells us now that living with passion is the key to leading a successful life, why are so many of us still so miserable? Why do we still struggle to live out loud as inventors and pioneers of our creative process? Why do hierarchies, racism, and hate even still exist? You see, one why led me to another until I found myself questioning everything. And down the rabbit hole I went. What I discovered on my journey is what I now believe to be the shackles of human expression. For as long as we continue to define ourselves with nouns, race, nationality, gender, age, religion, career specialization, social status, we will never live to our fullest potential. Now, do not misunderstand me. My talk is not about labels, stereotypes, and how other people see you. We haven't earned the right to have that conversation. If we take so much pride in the labels and stereotypes we place on ourselves, how then can we be offended when other people recognize them? This talk is about how we as a people, as a society, have given power and authority to the nouns in our lives, and how those definitions sadly limit our actions, delegate our passions, and even more tragically, assign the way we think. Albert Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We are here today to rethink tomorrow. This means that we can no longer use the same flawed logic and assumptions we used to plan for yesterday. It is no longer enough to think outside the box. We must create new boxes to think outside of. So what is be the verb, not the noun, and how can this philosophy offer you a different perspective from the current definitions of life? When I say be the verb, instinctively, you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. You feel it in your gut. I'm talking about your instincts, your essence. Throughout history, we've oversimplified the idea to mean passions, but that's not what this is. It's greater than that. I'm talking about your DNA. I'm talking about that voice in your head that tells you to take action. The not the noun part is usually where I lose people. So now you may be wondering, what are my nouns and why shouldn't I be them? Let me explain. Your nouns are your definitions. They are your limits, your station. Essentially, the noun is a straitjacket to the verbs and expressions that you are. They are the definitions and narrow-minded perspectives that assign our goals, our aspirations, and the things we want to accomplish out of life. A condition that I call nouningitis, and you'll recognize some of its symptoms. It's that belief that hard work equals success. It's that constant need to be motivated to act, and it's materialism. I found that nouns really operate in three groups. The first type are our base nouns. These are the nouns that we inherit from birth. We really can't do anything about these. They are our race, our nationality, our gender, sexual orientation. And then we have the hierarchy nouns. The hierarchy nouns are the nouns of our career specialization, our job descriptions. These are the nouns of our education level, what we've studied in school. And then we have the hierarchy nouns. The hierarchy nouns are based on the beliefs and biased perspectives of the culture within you live in. I came across a quote by Stephen Fry. He said, "We are not nouns, we are verbs. I am not an actor or a writer. I am a person who does things. I act and I write, and I never know what I'm going to do next." He said, "I think you can be imprisoned if you think of yourself as a noun." On one hand, I was excited to see a mind that so clearly thought like I did, but then I realized that Stephen Fry had quoted me before I had the chance to write my own philosophy. So while developing this concept, I got the chance to really work with schools. And when I come in to speak, I ask the kids one very simple question: what do you want to do when you grow up? This is a question that most kids feel that they know the answer to, And as you can imagine, I get a lot of, I want to be doctor, lawyer, engineer. Then I rephrase the question or reinstate the question. I didn't ask what you wanted to be, I asked what you wanted to do. Be and do is the difference between being a verb or being a noun. And you see, for a few moments, the kids are stumped. They take a step back because up until that moment, they've never been challenged to question their aspirations without the perspective of a label being attached to it. And as their minds begin to wonder, they begin to give answers that show expression, answers that show the human ability for innovation, passion, critical thinking. It was on these talks that I discovered context nouns. I saw whole generations of kids being herded like cattle towards their culture's prescribed definition of success. In Nigeria, where I'm from, the kids claim their passions to be doctors, lawyers, and engineers. In Houston, Texas, when I speak to students there, they claim their passions are football player, basketball player, rapper. And in the LA area where I live, you can already imagine what those nouns and passions sound like, right? Actors, models, fitness models. In my career in management and working with companies, I found a similar noun, the hierarchy nouns. This is where I really got to see their influence. Generations of people come into work, not really inspired to action, but just worried about the next level of title to achieve. They weren't in the organizations to inspire change or action. It was all about the labels they could achieve and the money. They were just working for labels and titles, money and titles. You see, there's no real way or no real format, no step-by-step guide to give you to become the verb. It's your verb. You're not a noun. There is no four-step process. There's nothing to become. It's going to be an ongoing process of change. All I can offer you are guidelines. For example, you take a person with the same ability for grace, athleticism, and courage, put them in two different realities, one a time of peace and the other a time of war. In a time of peace, this person might be a great dancer, moving through time with amazing grace and athleticism and ability. In the other perspective, the time of war, they might become a famous warrior, great soldier, moving through time with amazing grace, athleticism, and ability. As you can see here, the verbs never changed regardless of perspective. The person stayed the same. The only difference was the nouns they became. Your nouns are the biased perspectives we become based on the cultural perspective you live in. So the first guideline I will give you is creating what I call your wealth. This is your self-awareness. For most of us, we look at our life's goals, and it's reflected in our vision boards. You look at the vision boards of most people, it's all you see on there is nouns, who they want to be, and the material things they want out of life. Not saying there's anything wrong with this, but I urge you to add in the actions and passions that truly inspire you. Because the noun perspective of wealth would imply that hard work equals success, but hard work is not the secret to success. The second guideline I give you is developing an arrogance about yourself. Now, this is not a bad thing. I call this your self-esteem. You see, the idea that you will in fact change the world is not humble. There's nothing humble about that, and it transcends confidence. It's an arrogance you have to have about yourself. As Steve Jobs once said, those who are crazy enough to think they're going to change the world are actually the ones who do. There's nothing humble about that statement. The third guideline I will give you is, in the process of discovering your verb and living on purpose with intent, you will experience loneliness. Great men, those amongst us who become great, do not set out to become leaders. Actually, people who do scare me because they haven't internalized the burden that comes with the title. Great men who inspire us never set out to become leaders. They merely saw a problem they could no longer ignore, and they took action to change it for themselves. So that's your self-esteem. And the last step, the last guideline I'll give is to take action. I call this your self-motivation. And this is where I emphasize the fact that you do not need a title, a label, a noun to be inspired to action. You do not need to have a degree in writing to write. You don't have to have a degree in philosophy to think critically. You don't have to have a degree in engineering to create something great and of value to society. You don't need the noun to act. If anything, the verb is just your noun is just the channel or the access point for the verbs that come to life. So now I want you to take a second and reflect on the nouns that affect your life. Let's internalize this and question, what are my verbs? Because you see, power concedes nothing without a demand. So it's easy to see how nouns have infiltrated so much of our society. They gave us simple answers to complex questions, but we can't accept those anymore. Oscar Wilde once said, if you know what you want to be, you inevitably become it, and that is your punishment. Think about that. That is your punishment. But if you never know what you want to be, you can be anything. That is the idea. When I was 16 years old, growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, I had a brush with death. One of my many brushes with death. See, a lot of us know we're going to die, but for me, death sinks in a little bit deeper. It just became the norm for me growing up. So one of those moments, we lost power in Nigeria. I went out to grab some candles so my brother and I could have some light for the next day. And I got attacked by gunmen. Drug my body back in, held me at gunpoint, forced my brother to open the door. For fear of seeing his brother get killed, he opened, which I advised him not to. And as they ate our food, robbed us of our property, they had me on my knees, had my brother right next to me, and the gunman put the gun at my temple, and he was counting down to 3 to shoot. You see, life slows down very quickly when you're about to die. A lot goes through your mind. A second becomes a minute. And at my moment of death, my nouns did not matter. The nouns of my race, my gender, my religion, my career specialization, sexual orientation, social status, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. My regret was the experiences I hadn't had, the things I hadn't done, all the big ideas in my mind that no one would ever see, no one would ever know. I was going to die, and frankly, the family that would remember me were soon to follow. And right before he opened fire, the leader said, "You know what? Stop." You see, I was pissed in that moment because he had spared my life and dismissed it at the same time, showing how worthless I was. I hadn't done anything to inspire myself and definitely not inspire anyone. And from that moment on, I have literally been chasing that bullet because I refused to live my life to justify the reason why I wasn't killed in the first place. I refuse to live like that. I refuse to live like a noun. So to rethink tomorrow, I say to you guys, be the verb, not the noun. Thank you.